Well, you ready? I think we're going to have fun. I think this is going to be
How much do I have to do to get ready?
Well, yeah, I'm groomed. Put on a shirt.
I'm groomed. I pooped. I'm ready. I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, what? Why do you? You know, you have a thing. You go to you have a sort of a, if I may, a rectal fixation.
No, I don't.
You go to poopy references readily poopy. Lori, am I right?
She's going to agree.
And he says underpants all the time.
Here's what I learned.
Yeah.
And poopy pants. Underpants and poopy pants.
What's my email? Don't say it to the public. You know what I found out? That Laurie so kisses your ass because you're on Seinfeld. It makes me nuts. Look, she laughs when I say it. She raps. When I'm talking,
it has nothing to
every
do with
episode, we should show, if you can reverse the camera. Kevin, hold on. You'll be on in a minute. If you could show,
take your time.
Thank you. If you could show
Jews and fecal references for 400.
No, wait, that's what we were going to call this podcast. But we came up with really no really.
Yeah.
If you could do a reverse at when I'm talking at the end of a segment, she's going like this.
Yeah.
And you're talking, she's like this.
Let me tell you why. It has nothing to do with Seinfeld. This is what it has to do with. God forbid something should happen to one of us.
She'd rather it be me. I know.
if this podcast were to continue.
Because 2 seconds later, it's Kevin Pollak and you. I know.
Right?
I got it.
You understand what I'm saying?
I understand. Okay.
Really? No, really. Really? No, really. Really?
What we're about to use as a really, no, really, to me is no big deal, but to you, you were gobsmacked by this.
I knew Kevin Pollak, I think, before you. I love Kevin. He's a great guest. But we only do really, no, reallys. We don't just have people on.
Right, we don't just have people on.
But I'm thrilled we have Kevin on because one day you just said to me in passing, I was supposed to get the role in A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men, right. I was cast in A Few Good Men.
And I look at you and I go, really?
And you went, what happened?
Really? No.
And I went,
really?
I couldn't do it. So Kevin Pollak did it. And you were like, how the hell? Worlds are colliding. How does that happen? That Kevin Pollak would replace you? Like it was
No,
the most
that wasn't the answer.
him?
It wasn't how would Kevin replace you. It was, how were you cast in Really, No, Really? Because I can imagine you in the courtroom scene there with Cruz and Nicholson and all that.
Oh, not you couldn't imagine.
Not because
Why? Because I'm such a low talent?
No.
I don't have the gravitas of a Kevin Pollak?
Yes, no. The last three, yes. No, because just like I couldn't imagine Kevin as George Costanza. Once it's ingrained in your head, it's there. And Kevin did such an amazing job.
He was okay.
He's leaving. He's leaving. Okay. Took the headphones off and he's gone.
Yeah, he's gone.
And good night. This is Laurie. Start wrapping this up now because Kevin has that. By the way, that's a nice color wall. Did he go to the bathroom? Where did he get rid of?
I'll tell you this: you see the black framed photos? They're not straight.
Yeah, Kevin, the photos aren't straight.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine him doing a better job than you. You own that role. That was you. I mean,
anyway, that's what flabbergasted Peter, and so it was a good excuse to have my now very old and dear friend Kevin Pollak. You know him as an actor, comedian, impressionist. You know him from films like A Few Good Men, Grumpy Old Men, the sequel Grumpier Old Men, Casino, End of Days, of course, Usual Suspects. He was a god on The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. He is one of the progenitors of the podcast. He had a podcast, chat show.
The one that made me laugh is in doing the research. You actually created a show called Talkin' Walkin', or Walkin' Talkin', or whatever, where you just did the whole podcast as Christopher Walken. Correct? Is that correct?
Or people do Christopher Walken.
Or people do.
What's the premise of that?
No. I would have someone on as a guest, and we would talk about the minutiae of life for 45 minutes or so. And I spoke only as Christopher Walken, but we never referenced me or Christopher Walken at any point during the conversation.
So, to me, it's so wonderful that you went for it's like going for the joke and then sticking with the joke. It's unbelievable.
Called committing.
That's called committing. And I got to tell you, in starting this episode,
you got to tell me?
I got to tell you this because it's really important. Right. There's a lot that we're going to talk about. But it's usually interesting for me that something bubbles to the surface that is important, that I can pull out of any episode with anybody where you go, this thing really it spoke to me. And you had said a line in some interview you gave that said, if you're not creating, you're waiting.
Yeah,
and that
was a
hit
mantra.
Me. Yeah, that hit me really big. Because it's not like saying you're lazy or this and that, but it's a really smart way of saying, get off your. You should be doing stuff. What are you doing? If you're not creating, you're waiting. That really, Kevin, spoke to me in a big way.
Well, I appreciate that very, very much because it means a lot to me. So the fact that it would mean anything to anyone is always a pleasure to hear. It started around the same time as that first podcast, Kevin Pollak's Chat Show in 2009. It was the Chat Show was sort of born of that because as actors or comedians or any quote unquote piece of talent, we're taught to wait for the phone to ring. And so instead of waiting for the phone to ring, the idea was you're limited by your imagination only, so create whatever you want to do. And so many people have done it over many, many decades, if not, dating back to, what was it, United Artists, I think was originally, right? Yeah. So if you're not creating, you're waiting. And what are you waiting
for? But
it's brilliant. It's
brilliant. Fact that you created, Kev, what I admire about the Chat Show was you were taking
your episode.
Well, yes, that was a standout. But you created in an area that wasn't really yet a thing. You have this whole thing. You never had to wait for a gig because you are the gig. You could go into a club, you can go into a venue, and you are the show. You have a traveling road show that you can do. So the fact that you have sort of created in areas that were not yet ripe for the picking, where you don't quite know what the rewards are going to be, points to not only a creative mind, but do you find that you're curious about that kind of stuff when you go, oh, there's an area that nobody's quite played in? I mean, you don't tend to just. I know some comics and actors.
I hate this.
No, don't tell me.
Long question.
Yeah.
Why is Laura yelling long question? She yells at me long question. This is a mini-series here.
Your poopy pants. But you know what I mean? You
yeah.
Are you drawn to that? Are you intrigued by these other areas?
Yeah, it's probably why I wrote a book, directed a couple of movies, because I wanted to keep diversifying and expanding my opportunities by creating them. I mean, and yes, I did absolutely wait for the phone to ring for many years. Yeah. Between being a stand-up comedian, rising to the local scene in San Francisco where I'm from, moving to LA, and then getting my first job in LA, there was at least 200 auditions where at one point it started to feel like, how about anyone but you was going to get it? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah, and in fact, it was A Few Good Men. That's what was the goal line of going from auditioning to getting offers. It was the 8th movie that I did, and yeah, that was the one that. Yeah. And to be clear to the earlier setup, as we discussed on the Chat Show many years ago, and has made the circuit. But I'm glad Peter hadn't heard it before because it allowed me to come on your program here. Yeah. So I was doing a summer series created by Rob Reiner and Christopher Guest for CBS that 9 people ultimately ended up watching, called Morton and Hayes. And I would have lunch every day with Rob Reiner, and he, at one day at lunch, pointed his sizable finger in my face and said, this next film I'm doing was a big Broadway success. I got Tom Cruise. I think we're going to get Jack Nicholson. And there's this part of Tom's co-counsel that you're perfect for. I've got an offer out to Jason Alexander, but if Seinfeld gets picked up for a second season, he won't be available. And I'm just now realizing you could do this. And, a couple things. A, I went home, of course, and prayed for Jason's success. Like more than intensely than I had prayed for anything ever. But also just people talk about good luck, right? So the fact that I was having lunch on a daily basis with Rob while he was casting that movie is just completely, utterly luck of the draw.
Yeah. I heard you tell a story that when you were a kid, you'd come out of the movies and you would be doing, a piece of the movie. You'd be imitating something from the movie. But I was a fan of theater and film and whatnot when I was a kid, but it took me until I was a teenager before I ever thought about being a part of it. And it happened by accident because we moved from one town to another and the theater kids picked me up and I wound up on stage. How did you actually decide this is what I'm going to do? And was the family behind you? I mean, you went from being a cute, funny kid who imitated the movies that he saw to going, I'm going to do this. What was that journey?
Yeah, well, my mom told me that as early as age 4 or 5, when she took me to the movies, when we exited the theater, most of the time at conclusion of the film, sometimes a little early, we didn't have patience for bad as a team, that I would not necessarily be impersonating, but I, almost in a Zelig way, had become someone in the film. So a little 4.5, 5-year-old Pisher was Marlon Brando for no reason, and not an impression, just the attitude, the behavioral, maybe the cadence, walking as the person. And she just marveled at it and didn't really make anything of it. But secretly, I was thinking as early as that age, how do you get to do that? And I just wanted to be in the world that I was watching. Like I remember many years later, seeing Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid in the movie theater 12 times.
Jeez.
Because I just wanted to live in that world. And then I realized I don't want to just live in that world as someone who works at the saloon. I want to live in that world as one of those actors doing those scenes.
Yeah.
Not knowing what that meant, how you get there. Nobody in my family was connected to showbiz in any which way. And then I got sidetracked with stand-up, quite honestly, because while I was having those Butch Cassidy moments, I was also collecting stand-up comedians on television the way my friends collected baseball cards. And, I was allowed to stay up and watch Carson or We're So Old. It was Ed Sullivan initially.
Yeah.
Very early days. But the comedians absolutely captivated me. And then my parents would bring home comedy albums and I would watch them laugh uncontrollably to the point of discomfort on my part. It was as if they were crying uncontrollably. That's how awkward and out of character it was to see them laugh.
Yeah.
And then that certainly laid the groundwork for, I'm going to learn how to do this.
So was it acting that called to you first and comedy just happened to be the road in, but your eye was on the acting?
Stand-up hijacked it.
Really?
Stand-up hijacked it. Yeah. And then they sort of lived together when I started maybe doing a couple plays in high school. But yeah, that I was horrible in class in school. So the idea of when others would say you should go to an acting school, it sounded horrible to me. If someone had maybe surrounded me as your friends did from the theater world and said, join us, that would have changed the course of things, but it didn't happen.
So you've never formally studied, right? Acting.
No, just at the feet of the greats.
Observation and experience,
and why impersonate? How did you find yourself into impersonation? Of all the comedy things to do, that's like not only do you have to be funny and figure out jokes, but I also have to kind of commit to being this person and be accurate enough and close enough that the audience gets it without being the comedians, the old guys who used to always come out and say, "Oh, look, it's Jimmy Stewart." It's like announcing who they are. That's a weird thing to glom onto and say, "I think I can do that."
Well, Jason will tell you that it's just you have a freak ear for it and a desire to pursue it, or you don't. Every child learns to speak from mimicking their parents or sounds around them, right? And some of us that mimicking just doesn't go away, it doesn't stop. So yeah, I would make my friends laugh in junior high into high school by impersonating whoever was interesting on the scene in TV or movies. And based on their laughter, I started to think, oh, I guess I can do this. It wasn't a master plan. And then, I was lip syncing comedy albums, not knowing that was a thing until, just sort of interacting with the album when I was alone. I wanted to be the guy standing there telling those stories, right? But then that did lead to doing the voices. And then, people's reaction, I eventually would almost Penn and Teller break down the illusion in my stand-up act about doing impersonations and how it's a parlor trick. if I can think of someone you like and I can recreate them in front of you, I will basically steal the affection you have for the actual person. If I thought you liked Peter Falk as much as I did, and I said, "Oh, geez, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a pest. Can I ask you one question? Where did you get those shoes? My wife, she's crazy about shoes. Her name is Imelda." So the deal there is, I promise you, if you didn't know who Peter Falk was, or you didn't love Peter Falk, what I just did would be maybe funny in a cartoony kind of way, but it wouldn't have any
meaning. Resonance.
Yeah. So it has a heart and a soul because you know who the person is. So once I tapped into that, it never made sense to me to say, what if Jimmy Stewart were a busboy? It might go something like this. Even though my dear friend who I started out with.
By the way, you got to do Jimmy Stewart as a busboy now. You have to. Yeah.
Well, I was about to say, I started out in San Francisco stand-up with Dana Carvey in the late 70s. And he actually did the funniest bit ever, which was Jimmy Stewart as a waiter. I don't know if he ever did it in any of his specials, but yeah, he just a very impatient waiter as Jimmy Stewart. I don't want to bastardize it, but it was something like, well, I told you the specials 20 minutes ago. What do you mean you're not ready? Yeah.
Did you? Now, do you have? I mean, I'm not going to make this all about the impressions, but do you have a methodology for getting one of those things, or do you just either have it or you hear it enough and you've got it, or
they're in my wheelhouse, or they're not. Dana and I would always say we got our Johnny Carson from Rich Little, we got our Kirk Douglas from Frank Gorshin. There's someone who had to break the code,
right?
Or you break the code yourself the way Dana was forced to once he was on SNL. One week we were talking on the phone on a Tuesday, and I said, "Who they got you doing this week?" And he said, "It looks like they're going to want me to do Ross Perot." And at that point, Ross had just appeared on Larry King, I think just once, and we both sort of started playing on the phone call with the idea of what is a Ross Perot impression. And by the end of it, we both had a Ross Perot impression, just pat. And I said to him, "Well, wait a second, this sucks, because come Saturday, you're going to become famous for doing Ross Perot." And I just nailed Ross Perot, and no one will ever care. So Dana's bit on Ross, his little catch thing, or the key that opens the lock was, "Can I finish, Larry? Larry, can I finish? Can I finish?" Because Larry kept interrupting him. My thing was, Ross Perot had an analogy for everything, and never did they make sense. The economy, you see, is like peanut butter. If you feed it to a horse and he chews on it, it'll look like he's talking.
Oh gosh! Oh my God!
Yeah.
See,
wow.
Yeah. There's no. I guess sometimes if you put your mind to it and they're in your wheelhouse, you can learn them.
I wanted to be good at it.
There's been many that I could never learn.
Well, I never ever wanted to be a comedian, but there were a couple of, like you, although I did it later in life. I was in college, having not really focused much on comedy, and I had a professor who, sort of took me to the outhouse and said, "Look, dude, you're 5'5", you're 30 pounds overweight, and you're already starting to lose your hair. You may want to think about some comedy." And so I started doing. I got very serious, and I had all the comedy albums that you had as a kid, but I wasn't singing along with them until I started then in college going, okay, why is Woody Allen funny? And that's when I started trying to learn the routines and do them with him to get the rhythms and to get the sound and the musicality of it, and so there were a couple people I could fall into, but he would even later admit to ripping off Bob Hope with that one move that became a signature of his, which was, "Yes, Rob." Yeah. That he just clearly ripped off. I meant a much larger man. Right, exactly. But I did not, like, for instance, I feel like I should be able to do Chris Walken. I cannot get Chris Walken. I can't get him.
Well, so
here we go.
I was dabbling a little bit. Chris McQuarrie, who after being a 26-year-old punk and winning an Oscar for The Usual Suspects, which I insist he'd leave at my mantle 1 week out of 52 for all the lines I improvised in his Academy Award-winning screenplay. I mean, literally every line that's quoted to me on the street by fans.
Of course.
Wow.
Yeah. It's something you came up with. Sure.
Wow.
The very first time my character speaks, in the beginning of the movie, when we're all individually round up before the police line. My character's in a garage. He's working on a car. The garage door behind him opens up and 5 cops spill in behind him, which he sees through the side mirror he's working on behind him. There are no lines written. And I said on the day, "You sure you brought enough guys?" In the movie, leave the trophy on my mantle 1 week out of the year, for fuck's sake. So anyway, so Chris McQuarrie and I were, he's now writing and directing the Mission Possible.
Yeah,
He's doing quite well. But we were casting a TV thing that we created less than a year after he won that Academy Award. And while we were casting, in between when the casting director would go out and get the next person to bring him in, we started improvising Christopher Walken and Regis Philbin co-hosting a morning talk show.
Because why not?
Because why not? Because we were quite bored and needed to make each other laugh. And then we were on the Warner's lot in the golf cart going to lunch the way you do, and we see Jay Moore walking, and we just about run him over as we corner him against a building and insist that he show us his secret for doing Christopher Walken, because he was the only one who had done it on television, which he did the famous Christopher Walken's Psychic Friends Network sketch on Saturday Night Live. And so he gave me the key that day, which I can give you, which is every single syllable word when doing Christopher Walken becomes a 2-syllable word. So the word N-O, no, becomes now. It begins there, and then you just spread it out.
It's Jay. I was doing a movie. I've directed 2 films that nobody has seen. Jay was in the first one, and he told me the story of that great time that he was in the cast and Walken was the host.
The bear suit.
And there's that, but also they're all in Lauren's office, and Chris has his back to everybody as they're all pitching ideas for sketches, and he has no reaction until he, out of nowhere, goes, "Dresses are funny."
Oh, that was the bear suit.
And everybody's going, yeah, sure, yeah. Oh, the bear suit? What?
That story, that exact same setup and delivery punch that you just gave, has also been attributed to him in that moment saying, "Bear suits are funny." Always make me laugh. I don't know which is funnier.
Oh my God!
Or which he actually said.
Bear suits is pretty good.
Yeah. So the Talkin' Walkin' podcast, as I was talking about, the reason I did it, what makes me laugh about the Christopher Walken impression and why I still do it, even though it's become the most pedestrian impression to do, is that what I find most interesting is the conversational Christopher Walken, him talking about the minutiae. So if you Google Christopher Walken impersonation, sometimes over 30,000 search answers will come up.
Yeah.
That's how pedestrian it's become. There are 5 pages on YouTube dedicated to Asians doing Christopher Walken. And they are hilarious. I won't do any of them because I'd rather not be canceled, but you do need to see them. The conversational, the just talking about anything and nothing without having to push. For example, here's your opportunity to ask Christopher Walken anything. Let's realize this in real time.
Here we go.
Anything you'd ever want to ask, and it doesn't have to be funny. It doesn't have to be a setup.
No.
Anything you're actually curious about.
When exercising, what is the one exercise that could probably yield the best result?
It's a damn good question, Peter. Frankenstein never scared me. Marsupials do, because they're fast. That's it. Doesn't really matter what you ask.
God.
That's where we're going.
Yeah. Oh my Lord!
Hey,
Anyone wants to buy
now
the
I know.
merch.
Oh my God! Now I know why you did the podcast, because this is just Chris.
Yeah.
Why are people?
Yes.
Some people scared of elevators.
It's simple. Probably the quick and easy answer, of course, is the up and down aspect. But what you really need to think about is the buttons. That's where it gets me. It's too intimidating. Which button? I don't know. I don't even know. I know where I'm going, but I don't know which button.
Is that as much fun to do as it is?
Yes, it's
oh
more
my
fun.
God.
By the way, this is the weird part about doing impersonations. When I am doing those people, it becomes like a possession. And for example, when I do Albert Brooks, I find myself, and as I did just now with Christopher Walkin, thinking faster and funnier than I do in my own thoughts.
Yeah.
So do Albert.
Oh, please. Is it me? Am I the only one that wants to be here right now, Peter? Come on. Tell us about poop, will you, buddy?
And you light up doing it. You know, I think I read about you, though, that you whether it's accurate or not, you tell me, you started doing impressions because you felt it exposed you less to rejection. That it was like you're not alone on stage. You got a protective coating because you're doing somebody else. Is that accurate?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's an observation that someone else might have had about me and asked me about it, as opposed to something I came up with on my own. I don't know that I'm that intelligent, but it does apply, and it comes from being more comfortable, as I just said, in those voices initially when I first started stand-up than in my own voice. It took me definitely a couple of years to find a voice. And, you know, if you were to study stand-up comedians, the great ones, it's finding your point of view. Then every subject matter is material once you find your point of view.
And also, you light up when you do it. And I watched I loved Misery Loves Comedy. I want to talk about that in a minute. But the thing, there was some really cool stuff that resonated there too. You got a lot of comedians to talk about, not just Misery. But the one thing that jumped out at me, and I think it was Jim Gaffigan who said it, the magic about being on stage and the endorphin release and the rush is, I got a secret that I'm going to present to you in a minute, and only I know it. And wait for it. I got it coming. That's such a cool, powerful thing that I know this is going to kill. And
Jason's felt that on stage doing a play.
Yeah, I remember doing the Neil Simon play on Broadway, and but I also had a weird reaction to that too, because I did the play for 10 months or 11 months, maybe even more. And the first 4, 5, 6 months, it was that rush of going, ooh, I got something good, and I know they're going to do this thing. And then I started to get resentful of the fact that they were going to do it.
Right, why?
I started to go, oh, you sheep, here it comes, watch, they're going to laugh.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because I got bored with it. I got bored with the material. And the nice thing about doing stand-up is you get tired of your routine, you switch it up.
But you do feel that rush of, I got something coming.
Yeah, when you know you've got it. When you know you've got it, it's really good.
Well, it's powerful.
It's a weird sensation. It's very powerful. Yeah.
By the way, the Misery Loves Comedy, if you haven't seen the documentary, it's one of the best documentaries I've ever seen, with comedians being really candid. I guess because you knew them all, they were really comfortable with you. One that jumped out at me was Martin Short walking with his wife. Why don't you tell that story? Because it was pretty like, whoa, this is revealing.
So I was approached to direct a documentary with the thesis, do you have to be miserable to be funny? And then I came up with the title, Misery Loves Comedy, which wasn't too difficult as titles go. But then I reached out to 60 or so annoyingly famous funny people and asked them if I could just, have them either meet somewhere convenient or many times, in the case of Marty Short, at my dining table. Freddie Prinze Jr. in the backyard talking about his father for the first time on camera. But the idea was to ask them all the same questions, more or less, and then break them into chapters. And then, like Bombs Away would just be them talking about being on stage, bombing, and so I don't remember which chapter Marty shared the story about. He and his wife were walking along and they saw a bench. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
You probably remember the story better than
Well, I forget who the other actor was, but he was walking along because they were going to go to this party where that actor, these people were. And he said, I got to sit down. And she said, why? He said, because I'm devastated right now. I can't fake going in there and dealing with the fact that there are a couple of people that have taken off that were my equals that are that much more succccessful. I don't know how to deal with that. Right. And it was really honest and just open. And he had to really deal with that and kind of up his game to even walk into that room because he was so devastated by their success.
Yeah, it was one thing to share with his wife who he could trust with these such a private moment and reveal of honesty, that he was so jealous, that's what it was, of this person or persons for getting a job. I think it was SNL that he wanted, that he didn't want to go to the party. Yeah. Then to share it with me and the camera for the documentary.
That was really something else. The other thing that got me was Christopher Guest did a thing, and I've never seen Christopher Guest really talk that much. And he did a thing where he threw you asked him about when he started being funny. And he said he started in school where he would throw this screeching noise across the room and get other people in trouble.
Oh, like a ventriloquist.
And he did it. And it looked like
he does it. And it was, when I was editing, I realized I had to put a little chyron or lower third, which says he's really doing it, because it sounds so dubbed in.
Right.
In fact, because in some cases he could move his mouth as if he were talking, and that same sort of whatever the sound was.
Loud.
It's bizarre. Chris Guest is a tough interview. He was on the Chat Show. We'd known each other a while since that Rob Reiner, Christopher Guest thing I mentioned at the top that led to A Few Good Men. He's tough. In fact, when he was on the Chat Show, people would email or call and say, "Ooh, buddy, ooh, that was tough." And my thought was, that was Chris Guest having a blast. What you just saw was the most fun he's ever had.
Wow.
In a conversation on camera, I assure you. Yeah, I don't think he ever really did talk shows.
It was fascinating to hear him talk at all, because I never have. A couple quickies.
Exactly.
Did Jack Nicholson really hit on your mom?
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Every story that's in the book and has consequently become a part of my stand-up act happened. Yeah, that's...
Was your mom that hot? Because Jack...
Well, you find that a stretch looking at me now?
No. I'm just thinking age-wise, he doesn't usually go for the older gal.
So I'll give a truncated version just because very long ones exist in so many other forms of media, including my own stand-up special. Where my mom comes to visit while we're shooting, she's, her nickname was the Sun because we were mere planets revolving around. And so when she came to visit in the courtroom, Nicholson on the stand, that just happened to be the day we were shooting. Not only that, but we just happened to be shooting a POV over Jack's shoulder, his POV onto the courtroom, which means the camera angle now is so wide for this setup. There's no place to put my mom where she can stand and watch us shoot. So they end up having to put her over Nicholson's other shoulder. And so while we're shooting, she's waving at me and oblivious to the process. And Nicholson sees how truly unnerving. I mean, I'm aware while we're shooting the movie, this is easily the most important thing I have ever done and might ever do. And my mother, one's ultimate judge, is in my eye line. That's bad enough. And now she's waving and making faces about how excited she is while we're doing the scene. So I'm losing my shit. Nicholson sees that, and in between lighting setups, he gets off the stand and comes over to the table where I'm seated and says, "Hey, Kev, how's it hanging? Listen, I was hoping you might be able to do me a favor." Yes. "I was hoping you might be able to get your mom off my ass." Huh? Think you might be able to handle that? "I wouldn't mind so much, but she's hitting on me. What the hell am I supposed to do, Kev? Huh? Am I supposed to take your mom back to my trailer? Is that what you want?" So, did my mom hit on him? I don't think so. Did Jack Nicholson say that to me?
Oh,
There you
that's
go. There you go.
fantastic.
Oh, wonderful.
Kev, can I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
You have done so much stuff, and most of the time, like me and like our circle of friends, our character actor friends, we're never the guy. We're in the group, but we're not the guy.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Is there a thing you'd
Well-
like to do where you are the guy? Is there a story that you haven't yet told that you're waiting to tell, or
I tell you, it's a great question. I've only been number one on the call sheet a couple of times, and the first time, the writer-director Rod Lurie, his next movie was The Contender with Joan
Yeah.
Allen and Jeff Bridges, and several Academy Award nominations for those performers, Gary Oldman. But the first movie he wrote and directed was called Deterrence, where I play the first. It's a political thriller, and we were in the same poker game. And he said to me one night, "Well, Peter, you might know him because he was a
Rod Lurie
radio-
was my movie reviewer, and
Your
I
movie
actually
reviewer.
had to call Rob after about the 7th review and say, Rod, you got to like a movie. You can't hate every movie you're saying is no good. And the fact that he was ready to be a director was amazing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I thought you knew. So he said, I've written this movie, and about 40 pages in, and it's about this president of the United States and who involved in this political thriller. And I realized as I'm writing it, I'm writing you as the character. Are you cool to read this, or should I start thinking about somebody else? And I said, well, do you want no one to see your film? I mean, why are you? So I'm exceptionally proud of that film and that work. And I was right. Nobody saw it. It's a damn good political
But you were
thriller and
great. That was a good movie.
very, very, maybe prevalent in today's world. But anyways, to answer your question, the reason the title of my book is How I Slept My Way to the Middle is because I've been afforded an extraordinary existence and happiness and opportunities. Standing on the set or at base camp while doing the usual suspects, and my agent called saying, you've been offered a part in Martin Scorsese's next film set in Las Vegas, written by Nick Pileggi, who wrote Goodfellas. I said, you could stop talking. Just, go make it happen.
Yeah.
On Casino. Those kind of moments
Yeah.
and various things. And then, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, where you get to be in an ensemble of amazing actors with a female lead who comes pretty much out of nowhere. Did a Emmy-nominated work on House of Cards, but no one really knew who Rachel was. But there I am suddenly with 8-page scenes where my character bloviates. So yes, I was used to, at the beginning of the 8-page scene, I say to Tom Cruise or fill in the big star here, hey, what do you think we should do? And then that star talks for 7.5 pages. And then I say, all right, let's go. So I love this character actor career that has afforded me all these travel all over the world, blah, blah, blah. And I've been in the airspace of the biggest stars in the world, out in their social, personal lives, and it's not to be envied. So I do think we've been afforded, Jason, the best of all versions of show business.
Yeah.
By being character actors who get work based on our own work. Directors, showrunners, at some point realize, well, this isn't the guy that's going to put butts in the seats, but I want him based on being a fan of his work.
The work.
That's great.
Yeah. Talk to me about poker. How'd you get in? Why are you so good? Why are you so good?
So another thing you can Google about me, just my name and the word poker. I was 10 years old. We would often summer at the Zuckers, who lived up the peninsula a little bit in the San Jose, San Francisco Bay Area. And I had a 17-year-old cousin who came home one night carrying a bunch of things that I would liken to as if he had come from a garage sale. But at age 10, for me, I didn't know what a garage sale was. That's just for me to explain to you what I was looking at.
Uh-huh.
And so he's carrying all these things very late at night. sort of sneaking back into the house, and I said, what's all that? And he said, I was playing poker with my friends. And I said, okay, not knowing what poker was. I repeat, what's all that? And he said, my friends ran out of money. So he had their things. He was carrying their possessions. And I said, quote, I would love to learn this game you're calling poker. So I've been playing since I was 10. And, I think I took to it and it interested me because at some point it was a game of forget about whether I think what I have, my holdings, my cards are good. This game is about trying to read and understand and predict what my opponent thinks is a good hand in this hand, what they think is good. And then all the betting patterns. So then it becomes a game of chess, and it becomes like Spock 3-level.
Right. 3-dimensional chess. Yeah.
Yeah. It becomes, there's just so much more to learn. And as you know, playing occasionally in my home game, you never stop learning if you love the game.
And in fact, what has screwed me up more often than not is not being a true student of the game, but being a sort of vacational guy where I'll read 3 chapters of a 10-chapter book and go, oh, interesting.
Yeah.
The more I think I know about the game, the more I get in trouble. The more mistakes I make.
Yeah. Every time I come back from World Series of Poker main event and play in my home game, my friends in the game will say, a comment on how my game has changed, and it'll last for 3 or 4 weeks. Then I'll be back to playing how I normally do.
Right.
But Daniel Negreanu, professional poker player, is one of my favorites. And one of the things I like about him is that he continues to evolve his understanding of the game based on the new and different approaches that the next generation has adopted. And I think that is the most difficult thing, which is why I envy it, because I don't know if I'm capable.
Danny's also, he has, I think he's made a deal that needs to be looked into somewhere with a satanic force. On the few occasions I played with him, having only revealed a handful of hands because I played to the end.
And he had to reveal his cards.
Within 30 minutes, it's like he's looking out of my eyes. So I'll make a 2 times the big blind raise pre-flop, and he goes, oh, you like the Jack Queen suited. And I have a Jack Queen suited. I mean, I don't understand.
Well, that's what I mean about learning what your opponent thinks is a good hand. Yeah. So Antonio Esfandiari, one of the great pros, has become a very dear friend, and his nickname is the Magician because he is, in fact, a genius at magic. And he also has a great appearance on the chat show where he talks a little bit about looking into your opponent's soul and figuring out what they think is a good hand. That's arguably the single most important thing about becoming a better player.
Yeah. But you're sitting at tables with people that you do not know. So for people that don't know, several years ago, Kevin, who is a very, very good player, I'm not just saying that, he is a very good player, and finished 134th, right in 134?
Out of 6,000.
Out of a little more than 6,500 entrants to take home.
A little perspective on that. So day one, there's so many participants at 6,500 number that they need at that year 3-day ones.
Right.
And each of those 3-day ones, there are 3 or 4 giant ballrooms filled with hundreds of tables, right? So 3 of those days, and then when I got knocked out at 134, I could see the remaining 14 tables.
Right. I mean, it's an amazing accomplishment. So when I say that he's very good, he's very good, but when you're playing at the World Series, I mean, you are at a table with people you don't know, and trying to do exactly what you're talking about, to see in their souls and go, what do they think? I always think my game is predicated on what story am I telling? What character do I want to play? What character am I perceiving across the table? But I can only get so far, because if I'm playing with really good players, they're doing the same things, and they're creating avatars that they want me to invest in, and I'm a good audience. I invest in the avatar.
Yes.
So in order to
you
play
have to find in the situation like that, you have to find the tight players, which in the World Series and main event, those are the recreational players who won their home game tournament where everyone buys in and sends the winner to the
right
$10,000 buy-in.
Yeah.
You got to find those guys. Who's the young gun that's just going to flood the pot by playing aggro or aggressive?
Yeah.
So yeah, you have to. It's a little bit of the game of Clue, figuring out which one is,
the killer. Yeah. Yeah. So interesting.
Well, Kevin, thank you for coming on.
Here's the real question, since we started with this. So when exactly do I replace you?
Yeah, so it's only right.
When Scorsese calls you again and go, Marty, I can't really do it, but it'd be great for this.
Yeah.
You owe him the one. By the way, could you teach anybody to do impression? My one question about impersonations, which is interesting, is, so the question is this. When you listen to a recorder, people say, is that what my voice sounds like? So you never really hear your voice. How do you know that the impression is scoring?
I'm going to teach, I will do it for people based on their reaction the way I did originally.
Here we go.
But I will teach you right now, and we'll end with this if you need to. This is part of the act now. I teach people how to do Jason Statham. Most of you know who that is, the short little British bullet head. I can call him that because he's not here. So when my book came out, I was doing the morning talk show to promote the book tour. And I was following him on these shows because he had a new movie out, because he hadn't had a new movie out in 6 weeks. So he would be the first guest and I would follow him with my book. And it only takes a couple of those appearances before the host or hostess invariably says, Kevin, Jason Statham was just here. Do you do Jason Statham? Well, the first couple of times that happens, it's difficult. And then after that, I realize I'm the jerk for not coming with the impression.
Right.
And I had to teach myself, which is why I can now teach you, Peter. And here we go.
All right, everybody home, listen carefully. Here we go.
Anyone can learn this. Jason Statham says 6 words faster than any human being on the planet. These 6 words are: do you know what I mean? Which he says as Joe mate. He reduces 6 words to 2 syllables. If I put you in that chair, you'd be dead in 30 seconds. Joe mate. Do you fucking know what I mean? But if you just say Joe mean, so the name Joe, the word mean, because Joe's a little cranky, and then gruff up your voice a little bit. Joe mean. That's it. You're done. You're welcome.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Well, yeah.
No.
Spot on.
Joe.
Spot on.
Joe mean? Joe mean? Joe mean?
Spot on. Yeah. Do you do anybody, Peter? Do you have an impression?
I cannot do anybody. I don't have an ear for
Nobody?
No. It's weird. I mean, I can play guitar. I can hear something on radio and play guitar, but I can't pick up a voice. And it's horrible. How would Christopher Walkin do? Do you know what I mean?
Well, first, I will add on to what you just replied. I'm tone deaf. How weird is that? I can't carry a tune in the bucket. I can't hear and carry a note. Maybe I mean, Jason would say I could learn, and I think that's probably true. I could learn.
Yeah.
Right.
But on my own right now, I have no idea how to.
Do you know what I actually tell people who say
slightly.
that to me? Now, there are some people who have actually had some sort of oral damage and they can't hear tones. But I find more often people that say that are so verklempt about singing that the tone that they hear, there is so much tension in the production of making their voice try that it takes it off the note that they hear. They actually can hear it. They're just they're inadvertently doing
Walking
things
themselves.
that screw themselves. But
So Walkin is Statham.
Okay, so I don't understand the lack of need or appreciation for syllables. I say use all 6. They're there for a reason. Do you know what I mean?
and they're 7 all of a sudden.
Man, you
The
were
greatest,
a joy.
the one that Kevin did at a dinner for us, and I went, I didn't know anybody could do this impression, but he told a great story. I'm not going to make you tell it because I know it's been a long interview, but he told a great story about something Bill Murray did on a set, and did a Bill Murray, outburst that was so spot on that if you can't do it, the story dies. And it was so good that I fell apart.
Well, he has a very specific rhythm if you were to dial it in. It really is about finding the music, weirdly, ironically in my case, finding the musical rhythm of how, and obviously Bill in his character work is
God, it was just,
pretty doable.
It's the same way, I fancy that I do a fairly good Shatner, although Shatner says I don't see it. But but you do have a way. It's not only the sound. You like, and I credit. There were a couple of guys in our like Gorshin, I thought was able to do a lot of this stuff. But there's a physical embodiment of it too that you get. You Dana Carvey gets it. It's more than just a sound. It's a whole transformation.
Yeah.
And
that's why it feels like a possession.
Yeah.
And you became friendly with Bill because of your impersonation, correct?
Shoes to the hat. Yeah. It was weird. I mean, I was doing it on talk shows, so he was either shown it or saw it, and eventually reached out about me. He wrote a book called Get a Life, and there was a chapter about people impersonating him, and he wanted me to come by the office and explain to him for a chapter in the book, which is in the book, wherein I will tutor or walk the reader through how to do, in his words, the consummate Captain Kirk. So I get that call, and this is, as Jason would tell you, the most absurd, from a monkey who does voices, to get that phone call. I race to the car. I'm halfway there, and it dawns on me, oh no, I'm going to have to say to William Shatner, well, Mr. Shatner, you're a shitty actor. I mean, that's why there's an impression, because you take ridiculous pauses. Now, I'm joking. He's an extraordinary actor, but he would, the character. There's actually a moment in Twilight Zone where the character of Captain Kirk is born, not the one on the airplane, but the one in the diner where he's stuck with the fortune teller machine. And his wife says, are we just going to stay here all day? Is this thing going to rule our lives? And he turns to her and he says, I don't know. And in that moment, Captain Kirk became.
Oh my God.
So halfway to Shatner's office, it dawns on me I have to say that to him. And I don't. So I make nice, and I'm in the book. And yeah, it's a ridiculous thing that you meet the person you're due. It's usually a no-win because, again, the parlor trick is me thinking of someone you like and recreating them and stealing the love you have. So if they're there, I am
it's a different
absolute fraud. Although when Alan Arkin, rest his soul, came to see me in New York do stand-up, he came backstage afterwards and said, you know what I've decided after seeing this? I'm not going to stammer so much. Do you hear me talking right now? There's no stammering. No stammering. I'm just talking. I'm going to keep talking even though I have nothing more to say.
Unbelievable. Anybody you can't do? Anybody you can't do?
Here's what I want to ask you. Yeah. And believe me, I'm not, I don't mean this is set up. You do not have to do anything. I always think that people that we tend to think of to do impressions of have something very unique about their sound or their presentation. Would I be an easy impression?
Yeah, well, yes, because of the George Costanza of it all.
Uh-huh.
I think George as a character, his highs are pretty high.
Uh-huh.
And his lows are very intense.
Yeah.
And so those are the wavelengths that people could easily
So it would be me a la George for the most part. But it's not like our buddy Richard Kind where, just sitting at the table we can all do some version of Richard.
No, you're not a caricature.
Okay.
So is there anybody you can't do? Is there anybody after all these years that you said, I can't break the code, damn it?
Yeah. Bad news on that question too, Peter. Sorry, because I have been asked it. And the answer is pretty lame, which is, of course. Yeah. No, there's a lot.
But who's the one that really pisses you off the most? That you go, man, I got
who's your version of my Chris Walkin?
Usually it's someone who comes into favor for a period of time, like a president. Right. So Dana, bless him, is able to nail who's ever president in about half a day. And I remember I struggled forever with W. I struggled forever. And then also what happens is Dana or somebody else breaks the code before you, and you're like, well, now what's the point?
Well,
Right.
do it. Yeah.
Boy.
So, yeah, there's always been people I just struggled with and could never quite get. Yeah.
Wow.
Interesting. Well, thanks for. Boy, it's
Well,
so
it's
good
so
to see
weird
you,
saying
man.
hi and bye to you because I see you all the time. But A, thank you for doing this. B, thank you for inviting me into your world as often as you do. And I am very excited to see what comes next. We just people should know I did an episode of Kevin's podcast on the Maisel show, and we had a lovely
Rewatch.
2-hour
Mrs.
conversation.
Maisel pod.
And we chat all the time, so it's never goodbye. But I because we never tell our friends enough, you do always make me happy. You always make me laugh. It is always a joy to be in your company. And
buddy.
truly, truly, when I watch you work, and it doesn't matter if it's comedic or not, it's the great thing about the people in our little circle that we've managed to put together. They're all people that I could have that Marty Short thing about and go, why them? Why didn't I get to do that? But I can't because I sit there and go, boy, they make me happy. Yeah. They make me so happy watching them do that stuff.
Yeah.
So thanks for making me happy.
Thank you very much for that. And Peter, I'm sorry you had to bear witness because I'm sure Jason's never said that to you. But
no, I promise you I have not.
You know what? I was going to say something real nice as a close that you're one of the. I was actually, what was starting to emanate in my throat was some version of, God, I've known you a long time, and you happen to be, of all the people I've met in Hollywood, one of the nicest people. But screw this.
And I come at you.
But then you come at me because he's got to resort to the mean humor.
Sure. Well,
No,
Peter,
Kevin,
I love you.
Kevin, you are one of the
Always
nicest.
have.
Yeah, I love you too. You are one of the nicest, menschiest guys out there, and it's so great to see you. I couldn't wait every week to watch you on Maisel, and every time you come in, every time you make an entrance, you made me laugh because there's always some crap that they threw at you, hidden money, some kind of aggravation, and you had to deal with it, and you play that funnier than just about anybody.
But it's also,
it was,
you
it
and
was
Caroline,
brilliant.
Thank you.
Aaron
my
were
God.
just so
God.
because it was always going to be, all right! And the energy just notched up.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, there was no messing up that particular performance. That
And you were
was pretty good.
successful and pissed about it. It was kind of really successful, and yet I have to solve everybody's problem. So thank you for that.
Thank
It was
you,
brilliant.
brother.
Can't wait to see your next thing.
I'll see you at our next dinner.
The Maisel, just to plug, why not, is called My Mrs. Maisel Pod. If you're interested in a rewatch, where I have Jason and other people who worked on the show as my guest each episode. Then thank you, fellas.
And where do we
time.
find that, Kevin?
How, to quote you on mine, when you plug this podcast, however you find your
Look for it. It's not
Everybody
that hard.
knows now.
By the way, if you can't find it, you don't deserve to hear it.
Don't
It's
listen.
that-
We don't need you.
Not that hard.
All right, pal.
All right.
I'll see you at dinner.
Take care.
God bless.
Kevin's a really interesting guy, and I think a little bit of an underrated actor, even though he's had a kind of a splendid career.
He's always great, but he's always great. I think he's been in about 90 movies.
Oh, you go to IMDb on
It's
him,
unbelievable.
and you can't get through
and he
the
is
list.
one of the nicest, much
He's a
nicer
good
than
boy.
you, so much nicer
He's a
than you.
really much
My
nicer than me.
God. Guggenheim, we got to run. But
Wait, before you go to Guggenheim, I have questions for you. Wait,
why
I
is
have
Laurie?
questions.
You do everything wrong. You
Would you please let Jason
So
talk?
why
What's
are
that way
you?
when Laurie saying something?
Can
What?
you please let Jason talk?
Oh, you know what?
Oh, he
Up-
never-
Up
no.
yours. I'm trying to wrap him now, and you're such an ass.
So I have a question.
I have a different feeling about Laurie. Too.
Now, you are one of the funniest people I know. That's really true. And for people that don't know, if they didn't hear you on the radio for all these years, there is no subject that I've ever asked you to riff on where I'm not crying, laughing at the end of it. Your mind is so spontaneous. You have just a funny take on things. But I've always marveled at the fact that whenever we've done stuff together, you get very verklempt about going out as yourself and just trusting that you're going to be able to talk and say and be amusing and be entertaining. You have notes and you have prep and you're backstage pacing like a nervous.
But you know what that is.
But what is why
Because
do you
you
have
know what
no?
that is. You know what that is. It was, and I know the incident when I was in junior high school. And you helped me get over this, and maybe you don't remember.
In Australia, yeah.
Well, and more than that, it was before that. I was a sergeant at arms at school. I don't even know what that means. And I had to memorize a speech. And you know me with memorization.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I memorized it all year. I had it nailed, and I went out there and I forgot it because of what you're 12, whatever. It was over. It was too much. Joel Asher, Sam Crowngold are all looking at me, my friends, and I was completely distracted. I went up, and the principal puts his arm around me, has to do it. Since that day, I convinced myself I can't memorize. And you said to me once, just go out there with bullet points and go for it. You know what you're doing. And that freed me up.
Yeah,
because
just
I didn't have to
tell
worry
the
about it. Because
story.
I don't care. It's really weird. I don't care about going out in front of 20,000 people, 100,000 people, 3,000 people. You saw me in Australia with 3,000, 4,000 a night. It was if it's bullet points, it's okay. If I have to memorize stuff, I get, even watching you, I get sweaty going, how's he going to remember all of that? Right. So I love the performing part. The memorization scares the living daylights.
But that's why I always think, the thing about you though is when you are at your best, you're being spontaneous. You're just riffing. You're doing your thing.
Right.
But yet, if I said to you, like the Adam Carolla thing, if I said, I'm going to throw a subject at you, Peter, riff, I think you'd be scared to death.
Where on a show? On somebody else?
If you were on
somebody else's show. Oh, on stage?
Yeah, if we went to a comedy club.
That I could do because
Really?
I would have no compunction because I know I could dig myself out. It's not memory. That's spontaneous.
So it's
that
just
I
about
could do.
the
It's
memorization.
about the memory
right.
thing makes me completely
That's
great.
good
We
to
could do
know.
an ad lib type show in a minute. I would love to do that because it would be so much fun. My favorite, by the way, since we're in Howie's studio, Howie used to do an ad lib thing, a improv thing where people would call out. He'd say, "Name a profession,
Right.
Name of this,
Give me
name
a
a prop,
location.
name a location,
Yeah,
and
a
after
relationship.
27,
Right.
he'd stop and go, "Now tell me what to say."
Right. We're going to do improv. Tell me what to
Tell
say.
me what to say. So
I have a little game, David. Before we go. Well, actually, no. Let's go to you first, David. Let's then you can play along in my game, and Laura, you can play too. Go ahead. What do you got for us, David?
Well, just a few things. Well, first of all, I actually Googled Christopher Walkin impressions. There's 142,000 results that pop up, but this is the interesting thing. The first 6 are compilations of different famous people doing it. But what do you think is the first solo impression of Christopher Walken that comes up under that?
It's either Kevin or Jay Moore because they are noted for doing extraordinarily good ones.
It's Kevin.
Yeah,
It's Kevin, yeah.
I'll bet.
Yeah. So I thought that was because everything else before that, it's it's number 7.
But you know
whatever,
why?
but it's
Because
a bunch of people.
Google only gives you, the way it works is the ones that are the most viewed will move to the top of the list, and Kevin watches it incessantly. That's why it has those
thousands of times a day. Jay Moore, if you're out there listening, start watching more.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, and again, maybe this is unnecessary, but since our really today was, that Jason was the original person cast for
Few Good Men, yep.
A Few Good Men.
Yeah.
Yes, the Lieutenant Sam Weinberg.
Yeah.
I thought that maybe I'd go through some famous roles that people know who they are, but who were some of the people that were either originally cast or asked to do that.
All right.
All right.
So, of course, we all remember in the Harry Potter franchise, the original headmaster, the Dumbledore character, was played by Richard Harris.
That's correct.
The wonderful actor, who then passed away, and then they had to find a replacement, of course. And they eventually found the wonderful Michael Gambon, who just passed away very recently. But before they went to him, guess which other British actor they approached?
I'm going to go with, and I may have heard this somewhere. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Peter O'Toole.
Very close. Sir Ian McClellan.
Oh, sure.
Okay, that would make sense.
Yeah.
But here, this is the one why I did it first. This is such an awesome thing. The reason why he turned it down is he said that Richard Harris was a critic of McClellan's acting. And he actually called him passionless, and in an interview with Hard Talk magazine, McClellan explained that he couldn't take over the part for an actor that he didn't appreciate his work.
That makes sense.
It was
So
basically
a little bit of a
out
grudge.
sort of
A little bit of a
respect
grudge.
for the. No, well, I looked at it sort of as respectful for the gentleman who originated
the role. By the way, just for clarity's sake, I'm going to correct. It's McKellen, not McClellan, but that's quite all right.
Oh, excuse me.
Quite all right, sir.
McKellen.
Yes.
I will overdub myself.
Or Sir Ian. We'll just say Sir Ian for now.
Sir Ian, much easier. Excuse me. All right, here's another one. Jodie Foster won the Oscar for her performance in The Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
But she was not the first person that they wanted to fill that role.
Okay. They wanted, I'm trying to think of when it was made, who would have been big. They wanted, what's your guess, Peter?
Gosh, for Silence of the Lambs, who would they want back then? The Goldie Hawn.
I'm going to say Meg Ryan.
Excellent guesses. It was Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michelle Pfeiffer,
Oh,
the other Meg Ryan.
Yeah, the other Meg Ryan.
The other Meg Ryan.
No,
And
Michelle
it's
Pfeiffer,
interesting.
of course, she was the it girl, right?
Yes, and the reason she turned down the role because she felt that it was putting evil into the world, and evil won in that picture, and she did not want to partake.
Oh,
in
that's
that
interesting.
role. So, there you go.
All right.
Here's an odder one.
This is the last one because we got to run.
All right. I'll do this one. Before he was John Wick, Keanu Reeves was, of course, Neo in The Matrix.
Sure.
Yes.
But he was not the first person they asked
that's
to be in that part. They actually went to several people before they settled on him. But which former co-star with Keanu Reeves was asked before Keanu Reeves to play Neo in The Matrix?
Winona Ryder.
I was going to say Pee Wee Herman,
No,
but go ahead.
I have no idea.
Well, the Winona Ryder is actually a good one. It was Sandra Bullock.
Was it
Oh,
really?
all right.
Oh,
Yeah,
look at
yeah.
that. All right, I'm going to play a very quick game because I know Lori wants me to go. I'm going to name actors.
That's all Laurie does is rap us. That's all
Because
we're
we
doing. We're
had
trying
Kevin Pollak.
content.
This is in honor of Kevin
ahead, go
Pollak,
ahead.
who is a comedian who is also an actor. I'm going to name you actors who have played comedians. You tell me what the film was or the role.
Go ahead.
The film or
Go,
the
go,
role.
go, go.
Jim Carrey.
Actors who played comedian. Oh, Andy Kaufman.
Very good. Robert De Niro.
Played Rupert Pupkin.
Pupkin. Very good. He did another one.
De Niro is a comedian? Played a comedian?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, De Niro played... No, that was Hoffman played Lenny Bruce. You got me on this one.
He did a movie called The Comedian where he played a guy named Jackie Burke. Tom Hanks.
I know he did stand-up. Yeah, he played stand-up about a
Played
club
Stephen
comedian.
Golden. Punchline. Billy Crystal.
Jackie, whatever that role
Right.
was. Yeah.
Eddie Murphy. Played Rudy Ray Moore in Dolomite Is My Name.
That's right.
How about, I'll give you two more. Laurence Olivier.
Oh, in that crazy... we played a TV host, the TV thing.
The Entertainer.
The Entertainer. Oh,
Right.
my gosh, yeah.
Played Archie Rice. And Jerry Seinfeld. Of course, played comedian Jerry Seinfeld. Thank you, Kevin Pollak. Thank you, my
Thank you.
dear friend,
Thank
Peter
you.
Tilden,
Thank
one
you.
of the great comics, one of the great friends,
Who can't
one of the
memorize.
great men, one of the great Jews, one of the great radio and podcast hosts, one of the great, most charitable men I know, one of the greatest fathers and husbands.
Laurie's going to edit this all out for time, so it doesn't matter.
And thank you,
Goodbye,
everybody,
everybody.
for joining us. We'll see you next time. Announcer Noah, take it away.
As another episode of Really No Really comes to a close, I know you're wondering who are the most impersonated celebrities. Well, I will tell you in just a moment, but first, let's thank our guest Kevin Pollak. You can find him on Instagram at KevinPollak123, YouTube at Kevin Pollak Chat Show, and on X at Kevin Pollak. And you can find us online at reallynoreally.com. We're also on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Threads at Really No Really Podcast. And check out our full episodes on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button and tick that bell so we know that you really like us. We release new episodes of Really No Really every Tuesday, so make sure to follow us on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. And now the answer to who are the most impersonated celebrities. They are Marlon Brando as the Godfather, Sylvester Stallone, Al Pacino, Christopher Walken, Michael Jackson, and still at number one, Elvis Presley. Really No Really is a production of iHeartRadio and Blase Entertainment. They wanted me to say that in an Elvis voice, and I refused.